All right. So the next question that we'll do is question number 3. This question is about The Simpsons. They rent a holiday house for $300 USD for the security deposit and then $150 per day. So we're going to let N be the number of days they stay in the house. C is the cost of renting the house. We're going to write a formula for C in terms of N. We're going to figure out how much it costs to rent the house for 30 days. And then we find out that they have $2,300 to spend on the rent of the house. We'll write an inequality that allows us to express this. We'll be able to find out if they have enough money for 2 weeks. And then we'll talk about the maximum number of days that they can rent the house. All right, so we're going to do all this right now together. And it's going to be fun. Or at least not painful. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move the question off. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so that I got a little bit more space to work. And here we go. So the first thing is they rent a holiday house costing $300 USD for the security deposit. Okay. And then it is $150 USD per day. Okay, so let's think about what this means first. So the first thing this means is that if they're going to rent, they must pay the security deposit, right? After that, each day will add on an additional $150 USD. Okay, so they have defined C as the total cost and N as the number of days. So if we take that, let's think about, okay, well, no matter what, my total cost, which will depend on the number of days, so this is essentially my f of x, right? This is another one of the nice things about function notation is that the f doesn't have to be an f. It can be any symbol, so I'm going to use the c, so I remember that this function is a function for cost, which depends on, of course, the x, which is the number of days. So I recognize that no matter what, I have to pay this $300 security deposit. Okay, that's got to be paid up front. So no matter what, I'm going to have $300. Okay, now in addition to that, I have to pay $150 each day. So I'm going to go plus 150, but it's not simply 150 because it's 150 for 1 day. If it's 2 days, then I need 2 times 150 or $300. If it's 3 days, it'll be 3 times 150, and so on and so forth. So the number of days needs to be multiplied by 150 so that we know the final cost of the house. So we now have a function which represents the total cost dependent on the number of days, and that was part A. Okay, the next question is B, and B says, well, how much does it cost to rent for 30 days? So if the number of days is 30 days, how much is it going to cost me? So that just means that N is 30. So I'm going to do C of 30, which is going to be equal to 300. This is like your homework last night, so this should be pretty straightforward, times 30. And so that will be 300. You can check this on your calculator, but 3 times 15 would be 45 plus a couple of zeros on there. Add it all together, I get 4,800 US dollars is equal to the cost for 30 days. And that's part B. Now on to part C. In part C, it tells us that the Simpsons had $2,300. Okay, which obviously is not enough for 30 days, but they don't want it for 30 days. They want it for 2 weeks. So the first thing we're going to do is write an inequality. The inequality is going to represent the number of days. So they have $2,300. So we can say 2,300. Now, this is going to be related to our 300 plus 150N. Now, think about this for a minute. Do I want the money they have to be greater than or equal to the cost? Okay, so this is the cost. This is how much money they have. the money they have needs to be greater than or equal to the cost. If this is less than the cost, then it won't work. And so anytime that what the cost is less than 2,300, then we're good to go. So this is our C part I. Now we're on to II, where it asks whether they have enough for 2 weeks. So we're going to try that. We're going to say, well, is the money they have greater than 300 plus 150 times 14? Okay, so at this point, you want to work that out. I'm going to pull out my fancy calculator here, in which, oh, I got a nice, beautiful glare there. So we'll just kind of turn it a little bit, and we'll go 300 plus 150 times 14 days, and I get 2,400. So 2,300, is that greater than or equal to 2,400? The answer is no. They cannot rent for 2 weeks. Okay, 2 weeks being 14 days. Now the next part says write down the maximum of days they can rent the house. There's a couple of ways that you can do this. One is just to solve for n in this equation. We can just say 2,300 is greater than or equal to 300 plus 150n. So let's find out what n can be. So I'm going to subtract the 300, giving me 2,000 greater than or equal to 150n. I divide by 150. And when I do that, I get an answer of 40 over 3, which is 13.3. So I get 13.3 is greater than or equal to n. Or in other words, n needs to be less than 13.3 or equal to that. So what that means is that they can stay a total of 13 days. Okay, you can't do half days, you can't do by hour. 13 days. After that, any extra days, they're not going to be able to afford it. Now, the other way, of course, that you could have done this, recognizing that these are only $100 apart, and knowing that one day was $150, which is what we see over here, you should be able to say, well, knowing that it's this much for 14 days, well, 13 days would be 150 less than that, which would be 2,250, meaning that 13 days, yes, checks out. Any more than that, 14 days obviously doesn't. And so a couple of ways that you could have thought through that. If you do decide to do the logical thing, make sure that you write down a little sentence saying, well, recognizing that it's only $100 difference, $150 will make the difference of being able to stay or not. All right, and that was question number 3. That's all.